Chapter 5.2 by Lindsay and Savannah. First, we're going to talk about some vocabulary. The first word is population, and that's a group of people, things, animals, or plants that we may draw data from. And then parameter is a fixed number that describes the population. Sample is a set of data collected and/or selected from a population by a defined procedure. And statistic is a number that describes the sample. Then the next word is bias, and that's a favor to one side or part of a sample or data. And so an example of that would be like if someone asked a question that was like, do you think we should increase gun control to prevent things like the incident in Newtown, Connecticut where all those kids died? And that's bias because everyone, would want to prevent children from dying, so it would probably cause a favor to the outcome in the way of getting rid of gun control. And then the next word is variability, which is how spread out the values of the sample statistic are when we take many samples. And then the next one is confidence statement, and it has two parts, which the first one is margin of error, which tells us how close our estimate comes to the truth. And then the second one is level of confidence, which says what percent of all possible samples satisfy the margin of error.
Here are some things to remember. To reduce bias, use random sampling. To reduce variability of an SRS, use a large sample size. So let's take a look at example 1. The local school board posts average SAT math scores for each high school in the district. For one particular high school, the average math score is given as 516. A statistics teacher at that high school thinks that this is too high. He takes a random sample of 100 students and finds that their average SAT score is 486. Make sure that you write down population, sample, and perimeter and statistic on your paper, and leave space for the answer as we're about to work through each one of these. For this example, the population is all students at that high school that took the SAT. For the sample, it's 100 students from that high school. The parameter is 516 because that is the average math score given for that particular high school. The statistic is 486. The formula for sample proportion is the sample over the total population. The formula for margin of error is equal to 1 over the square root of the sample. And that will give you plus or minus a number. The next formula that we have is confidence interval, and that is equal to the sample proportion plus or minus the margin of error.
For example number 2, Lenny Sanchez is running for mayor of a city with a voting population of approximately 250,000. He has only one opponent. 3 months before the election, Lenny pays a polling company to survey voters to find out what proportion of all voters plan to vote for him. The polling company surveys 500 voters and find that 236 voters plan to vote for George. Construct a 95% confidence interval for the proportion of all voters who intend to vote for George.
For this example, it'd be 1 over the square root of 500, because that is the amount of voters, which equals plus or minus 4.5. And then you have to find 236 over 500, which equals 47.2%. In order to find the confidence interval, you have to do 47.2 plus or minus 4.5, which is up here,
Which is the margin of error.
and then that would equal 42.7 all through 51.7%, and this is your confidence interval.